All right, hey everyone, welcome to our first episode of the Caffeinated Contractor. Today, this is a podcast where we bring in trusted contractors to help homeowners with their renovations and construction projects. And of course, I'll be drinking coffee while we do this interview. Today, we are going to talk about air conditioning units because it's about to get hot. It's May. I'm in Houston right now. It's starting to get a little bit warm. Massachusetts, where my buddy David is at, not so warm yet, but I know it's coming. And then when the summer does come, it's pretty brutal because I used to live up there. But anyway, while we talk today, I'm going to be drinking my favorite coffee, which is Black Rifle Coffee. Likes to support a veteran-owned business, but they also have great coffee. So I'll be drinking Black Rifle Coffee today. But let's go ahead and get into this. We're talking air conditioning to prepare for the summertime, and I've got my buddy David Sampaio here. I know David from when I lived in Massachusetts. I met him because he came to my house to do an estimate because we had an old house. I think it was built in the early 70s. And as
Yep.
soon as we moved in, we're like, we need air conditioning. We cannot live out here without it. So he came in, and what I remember first meeting you is just your high level of customer service. And I just knew from that point
Awesome.
on, it's like, okay, this guy here is someone I can trust, and I don't have to worry about getting screwed over. And then from that point on, we just became friends. We go to church together. And your wife was actually my son's teacher, so we have that
Yeah, that's
too.
right.
So, but anyway, yeah. So David Sampaio from Sum Zero Energy. So, David, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first off, thanks for having me. This is my first official podcast, so thank you very
First of
much.
many in the future.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you. Pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be here. So
Absolutely.
a little bit about myself. I guess I'll give a quick overview.
Hmm.
We're out of Massachusetts, specifically headquartered in the town of Holliston, little town in the Metro West area.
Hmm.
I own, along with my business partner, 50-50 partners, a heating and cooling company. And I'm married. I have a 7-year-old daughter. And, we've been in the area for a while. And I, born and raised Massachusetts. So, for 10 or 11 so years, I was in the Boston area.
Hmm.
And then from there, we went to the burbs. So,
Nice. Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, we started Some Zero Energy in February of 2019. And I say we started, but really that was just the day that we went on LegalZoom and paid the fee to get the LLC.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. So the first real job was like 6 months later.
Hmm.
Um, and then here we are now. We have a staff of about 23, 24 people.
Wow. Nice.
We're growing. We do deal direct with homeowners as of now. We're getting a little bit into some light commercial stuff, and yeah, it's been a wild ride. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, I know your background is more back in the day, more fitness, personal training related type stuff. How did you get into the heating and cooling world?
Yeah, great question. I was never I never really loved school. I was always kind of like the class clown,
Hmm.
kind of just wanted to make people smile, but I loved sports. So
I've
I
heard
was
stories.
yeah. Yeah, so I was brown nosing the teachers and everything. I always had a good way with people, just not with
Yeah.
books.
It's funny though, because the
But
school you went to is the school your wife teaches at now, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. And
That's
she's
funny.
complete opposite. She's like as a kid growing up, she was the teacher's pet. And
Oh,
I was
awesome.
like the teacher's worst nightmare. But yeah, no, I mean, but I always got along with the teachers and everything. There was a couple classes where they said, David, just make the class fun and I'll pass you. So I was like, sure. Plus, I was into sports, so we
Yeah.
had to upkeep a certain amount, a certain GPA,
Right.
so I can continue. And that's for me, sports is what got me through. So naturally, I thought, hey, I don't like school. I like sports. I like athletics. I like working out. Let
Mm.
me be a personal trainer.
Yeah.
Um, Funny enough, I did a P90X. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and the trainer in it, Tony Horton, was I was like, huh, I like this guy. I think
Mhm.
I'd like to be funny and fit. Seems like to be me, So let
Yeah.
me try to emulate. So I went through that. I ended up doing it for 5 years.
Okay.
And then on my fifth year of personal training, while doing that, I didn't realize it at the time, I was doing, I was responsible. It wasn't a big box gym. It was always a small group fitness studio
Okay.
geared for women that wanted to do weight loss. So
Mhm.
within it, there was a lot of consultations,
Yeah.
a lot of hand holding, a lot
Mhm.
of different type of clientele.
Right.
And because I excelled in personal training, the owner of the franchise, it was a big franchisee at the time, and put me to do sales as well,
Okay.
and train and do meal plans for people,
Mhm.
and work on the P&L and do
Oh,
marketing
wow.
newsletters every week and cold calling.
That's awesome.
Uh, yeah. So at the time, I just thought I was being a good employee. I didn't
Right.
realize that those skill sets that
Mhm.
he was developing in me,
Yeah.
like sales, and we're talking like he would listen into my sales calls
Mhm.
and critique me every single week. Why'd you do this? Say that next time. Do
Wow.
this.
That's great.
So that's where I kind of learned the art of sales,
Mhm.
but in a non-salesy way.
Yeah. Right.
I guess I would put it. Um, so all that to say, I got burned out. It got bought out by somebody else. They couldn't afford my salary at the time, and they took away my commission opportunities. And
Mm.
this was the time where my wife was pregnant, so she
Oh,
was
yeah.
not working as well. So severe pay cuts in our household.
Yeah.
So all I knew is I was burned out. The industry itself is a tough one. I would wake up every day at 3:30 and get home at 9 p.m. Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you can only do that for so long, and
Exactly.
then you take a bunch of pay cuts.
Mhm.
Doesn't bode well.
Yep.
And then I said, "Hey, I don't want to do fitness anymore, but I'm good at sales. Let me try a sales position."
Mhm.
Um, Somebody at the church owned an HVAC company and said, "Hey, I need a salesperson." Making a long story sort of short, um, I, I fell into it. I ended up loving it. I didn't know HVAC at the time,
Yeah.
but I knew how to sell and connect with people.
Mhm.
I shadowed install department, service department for about somewhere around 3 to 4 months,
Oh, wow.
and I really fell in love with it. And then I did a lot of self learning. I would read books. I would take courses online. I would, go to the job sites, learn everything, and do some installs myself.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And I had a great success. I did my first year in sales. I did 1.7 million
Wow.
in sales, and
Nice.
completely revolutionized my life, really,
Yeah.
because at that point I really needed the money.
Yeah.
And that first commission check was like, wow, like I can really do this. I can see
Yeah.
myself doing this. And my
Right.
second year in sales, I did 2 million
Wow.
over there. And so I was doing that, was doing well. And through some events that I don't want to really share, but um I decided it was my time to leave that
Sure.
company.
Mhm.
And I said, I've worked for people before. I have experience, somewhat in managing and doing sales and being successful at it. Let me start my own thing.
Yeah.
And I called my buddy, who's my now business partner, and said, "Hey, I'm out of here. I'm gonna, I think we should start something. We
Mhm.
were close at the time." And he's like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Awesome.
And then yeah, so that's how I got into it. And
That's great.
we didn't at first, actually, we weren't going to do an HVAC business, to be honest with you.
Oh, really?
What we wanted to do is we are big into building science,
Okay.
learning how the building works in conjunction with how airflow moves, how
Oh,
heat
interesting.
works.
Yeah.
So that was our biggest thing. Plus, we had the HVAC knowledge. We
Right.
really wanted to be consultants for homeowners to have a unbiased third party
Hmm.
opinion when they're deciding what to do with their home.
Right.
So we got certified by BPI, Building Performance Institute,
Oh, wow.
took a bunch of courses and all of that. So, um, however, we didn't know how to do a business out of it. Hence, 6 months of no pay after starting the business.
Yeah.
Then I get a call and, hey, Dave, I need a new AC unit. Will you guys do it for me? And I just look at him like, yeah, we'll do it. And
That's so cool.
there we go. And then we're like, hey, listen, let's do HVAC, but in a different approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was there. And now we're, multi-million dollar company 4 years
Nice.
later and going
Dang.
strong, thankfully.
That's great. I think the good thing though is that you have that like desire to know the science behind airflow, which makes you
Yeah.
better, right? That kind of makes you stand out. You're just not some guy who's going to come in and put an AC unit in wherever the homeowner wants. You're going to like, hey, you might want to put it here because
Right.
this and this. So I think
Right.
that's
And that's our whole message. That's what we fight against.
yeah, that's awesome. So it's May. I remember living in May out there in Massachusetts. It was still somewhat cold. Sometimes the snow is still on the ground, but it's going to
Mhm.
get hot pretty soon. So I know
Yeah.
people right now, maybe not, if the planners of the world out there are thinking about, okay, it's going to get hot. Do we want an air conditioning system in our house? So for those
Yeah.
people who are on the fence and they're doing the research on the air conditioning unit for their house, what are some of the things that they should be taking into consideration?
Great question. I tend I tend to be a very black and white and practical guy.
Okay.
So on the practical side of things, if you're thinking about doing it, you should start yesterday because,
Okay.
yeah, at least here in Massachusetts, human beings are usually moved more by pain than by proactivity.
Exactly.
So we had a mini heat wave uh, a couple weeks ago.
Hmm.
It's been cold ever since, but we had somewhere where people were turning on the AC units for the first time, and then they remember, oh, my unit's 20 years old, or oh, I don't have
Mm,
AC.
yeah.
Um, and then we start getting calls, right?
Right.
Because of that, our schedule is going to be backed up as
Right.
the time goes on. So as every week goes by, we're booking more and more jobs. So on a practical standpoint, you want to start sooner rather than later
Hmm.
because if you need AC for the summer and you decide in June, well,
Hmm.
you might not get that installed till end of July,
Yeah.
at least for us because
Right.
we're busy,
Yeah.
So that's something on the practical side.
Sure.
If you want it for this year, do it now.
Yeah.
And then other things to consider is the age of equipment. Usually, 10 to 12 years is what the manufacturer warranties are
Hmm.
good for.
Hmm.
Past that, I've seen systems that fail within less than 10 years. I've seen
Oh, wow.
systems that last 30 years. However, at the 15-year mark, 12 to 15-year mark, beyond that,
Hmm.
you're crossing your fingers
Okay.
because it's suspect to go anytime. So
Yeah.
getting it checked out, if it hasn't been performing well the last summer, it's something to consider as well. And really, the repair versus replace conversation happens a lot in my field, right? HVAC.
Yeah. Right.
Do I keep repairing this, or when is it, time to make sense to replace it versus keep repairing it?
Yeah.
So if
Hmm.
you've invested even over $1,000 in a piece of equipment that in a system that's 12 to 15 years or older,
Hmm.
it's time to start considering
Yeah.
replacing it.
I remember when I was working at the church and we had, gosh, I can't remember, like we must have had 15 to 20 units,
Yeah.
spread about all those buildings, right? And we
Mhm.
had these older units that were 20 something years old and they would go out. Obviously, the time they went out was when it was a heat wave and we had the child care centers, right?
Yeah.
So it was an emergency. And it
Right.
was like, all right, we need to make a decision here because the Freon in this thing is outdated. And
Yep.
there's, why put money into fixing something where the Freon's outdated? Why don't
Right.
we just get a new one? It's got a warranty, it's got the new Freon and stuff in it.
Mhm.
So, is there like a science behind like how many years of a certain type of Freon is no longer used or outdated, or is it just something that happens?
It's just something that happens.
Mhm.
The reason why they come out with new types of Freon is
Mhm.
because the new iterations are less harmful for the environment.
Right.
So the old refrigerant is called R22.
Hmm.
That one is outlawed, as you remember,
Yeah.
and therefore the ones that have still R22, we advise heavily against, you know, just topping it off with the old stuff. Number
Yeah.
one, if you have access to it, it's triple the amount
Mm.
of what it used to be.
Yeah.
Therefore, it just doesn't really make sense.
Exactly.
The current version is called R410A, and it's much better for the environment than R22. But believe it or not, there are talks about releasing a new one
Mm.
within the next 5 years or so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it really just depends on, it seems like, at least in America, the United States of America, that the talk about, decarbonization or being, carbon friendly, or,
Hmm.
reducing emissions is like
Yeah.
a big push right now. So I
Right.
think the more that those talks happen on a national level, the more that things are lobbied and stuff, so that,
Yeah.
you know, a big contributor is HVAC equipment. So
Right.
they have seen that with heat pumps, when that the ozone layer has improved already within the past 5 years, because there
Oh,
have been a
wow.
lot more heat pumps installed
That's interesting.
versus gas systems or oil systems.
Oh, wow.
So, but it's really, there's no science behind it. It's really just
Yeah.
whenever they say, "Hey, you can't use this anymore," you got to jump.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember in the winter time, right? Because we had the dual units, or both heater and AC units, and um,
Yep.
they were like 20 years old. The heater would go out and it would cost, I don't know, $8,000 to fix. And I would because I was like, all that came to me like, okay, I have to make a decision here. And I'm like, okay, well,
Yep.
the heater's broke. The brand new unit would be about, I don't know, 15, 20,000, and it's got R22 in it. I don't know if the AC is going to die on me during the summertime. Why am I going to spend
Yep.
five to $8,000 to fix the heater when, double the price, I
Right.
just get a brand new one, right? So, God, I don't know how many brand new ones we bought from you guys, but it seemed like we spent a lot of money on
Yeah, it
new
was a decent
units.
amount. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it was needed though, right? Because they were neglected and they're old,
Yeah.
and it was just time. And the kids were in there, so we needed to make sure that they were taken care of. But um,
Right.
definitely, going through that made me learn a lot about HVAC, more than I've ever thought I would. But it was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
So switching over to like homeowners, I remember when I got mine, um, we wanted specifically a central AC unit. And I
Mhm.
remember you coming to our house, you went up into the attic, and I went up there with you, and we're trying to figure out where can we put the pipes down from the attic through the second floor down into the first floor. And so we
Mhm.
had to figure out areas in our closets where we just hide the pipe and cover it up with wood and things like
Yep.
that. Ultimately, it worked, but there was definitely a science behind that. But the other option that we had was just doing split units. So for someone who's looking into something like that, they have an older house like I did, a two-story house. When should they think about a central AC versus a split?
It really comes down to the homeowner's needs and
Hmm.
wants,
Okay.
and what fits best their lifestyle and what they need. The biggest difference between central air and mini splits is that central air, you're really subject to one thermostat, many rooms.
Yep.
or very few thermostats in many rooms. Versus a mini split, you have individual control of every single room that the mini split is in.
Right.
So, for example, if since the pandemic, a lot of people work from home now, right?
Yep. Hmm.
So therefore, they're in a bedroom. Let's say a typical here in Massachusetts, we have colonial homes,
Yep.
colonial type of homes where you
Hmm.
have two floors, living areas on the first floor, and three or four or five bedrooms on the second floor. Well,
Right.
one of those bedrooms, they convert it into a at-home office, and they're in that room all day long.
Yep.
And in that case, conceptually, let's say, the other spouse doesn't work from home and the kids are at school, but you're in that one room. Central air now doesn't really make sense to
Right.
heat or cool, excuse me, to cool that one room when the thermostat might not even be in that room, and you're cooling the entire second floor just so that that
Yep.
one bedroom or office can be satisfied. That's
Exactly.
where mini splits would make more sense.
Yeah.
You could do individual mini splits in each room, or even it's called a mixed option where you can do a central air for the other three or four rooms and then a mini split for that room and just be able to turn on that mini
Oh,
split
okay. Yeah.
for that office.
That makes sense.
So now you're saving energy, that way. But let's say they don't have that issue. Everybody leaves the home for work and the kids are all going to school. Of course, central air makes a lot more sense. And when people are upstairs, it's usually everybody for bed,
Hmm.
right? For
Yep.
bedtime.
Right.
So therefore, central air might make more sense. So really, that's the biggest differentiator between the
Hmm.
two is,
Hmm.
do you want the ability to control more zones, or not?
Yeah.
And that's what I would say is usually what I try to get out of when we do our consultations or when I'm training our sales guys, on advising what the options are. You really need to find out, hey, uh, what's your lifestyle like?
Right.
When are people home? What do you
That's a
use
good
this
point.
room for? Things of that nature,
I like
because
that.
we want to be able to facilitate their lifestyle,
Hmm.
therefore make the proper recommendations.
Yeah. Yeah. For the homeowners, if you have a contractor of any kind of trade coming in and they're not asking you these questions, they're not doing a good job pulling the vision out of their minds. Our
Right,
job is to be the architect of that vision. And if
right,
the contractor's not doing that, that's a red flag right there.
right. I tend to say this, and I always try to preface and then teach my sales guys to preface this is that, hey, listen, you probably have seen two or three, four other people here. I'm most likely going to be different. I know that statistically speaking, you might have had a negative experience
Mm,
with other trades, but I'm working hard to fight against that and to give you the best experience possible. That includes me spending as long as time as I need here at
yep.
your house, which
Yep.
might take 60 to 90 minutes plus or minus.
Hmm.
But I promise you, it's not time wasted because I'm going to learn exactly what it is that you need. And then my job at that point
Hmm.
is to tell you all the options. Your job is to tell me which one you want, if you want to
Yeah.
move forward or not.
I love that.
And a lot of our competitors in our industry is, maybe the house has a central AC unit or HVAC system already installed,
Hmm.
and they just go to the basement or the attic, take a picture, peace. 10 minutes in and
Yeah.
out. They don't ask questions. They don't,
Yeah.
so they just replace like for like. Well, you
Yeah.
can't do that nowadays.
Right.
So yeah,
That's a good point. One thing I tell people is that you can find any kind of contractor to create the result, right? I mean, they're going to give you an
hmm
end product, but that experience they're missing out on, right? And
right,
if you want, if a business really wants to provide good service, they're going to give you a great experience from the marketing to the sales to the production to the end and the follow up afterwards, right? And if they're not
absolutely,
doing that, then they're just not a great business to work with. And unfortunately, there's too many of them out there.
right, right.
So with SumZero, you guys do something called an energy audit, and I haven't seen many companies do that. So what is an energy audit, and how do you use that to help educate your clients?
Great question. So that has transparently evolved for us. Before, we used to use it as a separate service where
Mhm.
we would test the home with things like a blower door test, which is something that depressurizes the house and looks for infiltration.
Oh, wow.
Basically, looking for how leaky is your house, right?
Right.
Because that is a major factor in how we can size our HVAC units. And
Okay.
then couple that with the infrared testing, infrared camera. So when you
Okay.
depressurize the house and you infrared have a camera that does infrared, you can see basically inside the walls and the ceiling where
Hmm.
there are gaps in insulation, if there are any, if there
Oh,
is
okay.
any insulation, inefficient windows, things of that nature. Now for us, it's basically the free consultation where our major difference is that we are Building Performance Institute certified.
Mhm.
That's BPI. It's a local institution here that does specifies in building science. So we like to call ourselves building scientists in
Nice.
disguise of HVAC guys.
I love that, man. That's
um,
cool.
yeah, and that, you won't really notice it. You'll notice it in our questions, but it's done very subtly. But
Okay.
we know what to look for in order to be able to size the equipment. Even if you have an existing piece of equipment, we're
Mhm.
not just going to assume that that's the right size.
Sure.
I don't know if they use the right sizing equipment at that time, and 9 times out of 10, it's not correctly sized.
Wow.
So, you know, so that's part of our free estimate or free consultation. We look at all that stuff and we do something called which really every HVAC company should do.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, no, not many do. It's called a manual J or a heat load calculation.
Okay.
So I'm taking a look at insulation values, if any, building, how the building is built. When was the building built? The basement, the attic,
Mhm.
window types. What direction of the house is it facing in comparison to the sun?
Oh, wow.
Do we have a lot of windows? Do we have not many windows? All of that plays a role in how much heat do I need to heat this house and
Hmm.
how much AC do I need to cool this house in that summertime. And then every town or county has a different
Hmm.
it's called load.
Okay.
And it takes the average of the coldest day of the year average
Hmm.
and the warmest day of the year average, and we size to that.
Oh, wow.
So, and a lot is involved. A lot of times before there was a lot of rules of thumb. 1,000 square foot house, I need 2 tons of cooling there. You can't do that anymore. 1,000 square feet, uh, super tight home may need half of that.
Oh,
A
wow.
1,000 square foot home that doesn't have a lick of insulation might need double. You never
Right.
know,
Right.
right? So you have to treat every home as individual because it
Yeah,
is.
man, you certainly sound like a scientist. Um, so for, in the area where you're operating, I know because I lived there, a majority of the homes are on the older side.
Yeah.
Even here in Houston, they're a little on the older side. When you do the energy audit, what are some of the common things that you see or issues that you see in some of the older homes?
The biggest thing is insulation,
Okay.
or the lack thereof.
Sure.
Um, and the lack of insulation really affects how well or not
Hmm.
home can keep the heat inside the house or maintain the cooling inside the home. So I talked about the blower door test
Yeah.
a few minutes ago. Basically, that is measuring how leaky the house is. If you take all of that leakage, And I'm talking about things like recessed lights. Around that is usually
Mm,
leaking to
yeah.
you never see people air seal around that anymore, right? So
Yeah.
air always goes, and it's a law in science, right? A high concentration to a low concentration all the time. So heat
Mhm.
seeks the cold. It's always wet to dry. So air heat rises, but
Yep.
it's that's called stack effect. Air always escapes. So think about it this way: you're heating a home that or cooling that has basically, if you take up all of those leaks and put it into one hole in the siding, it's
Yeah.
basically a window that's open all year long.
Oh, wow.
So you're heating a box that has holes in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to determine, you know, how big is that hole, and
Yeah.
advise, hey, listen, if you do X, Y, and Z, you could reduce that hole size, and therefore we don't have to put such a big HVAC unit, and therefore you can also save a lot of money on your energy bills.
Mm, yeah.
So
Man,
that's the biggest thing.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, my next question was about insulation, but you essentially hit it on it right now. Like, how important is it? It sounds like if you don't have it, you're screwed.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Or, you're condemned to a life of high utility bills.
Yeah, exactly. I actually walked into a house once in Ashland, and it was in the middle of winter. The guy had his heater full blast. He goes, "I don't have any insulation, so it's still cold in here." Like, man, like I can't
Yeah,
imagine his bills. I can't imagine living there. It's like, who would build a
right,
house even in the 60s or 70s and not put any kind of insulation in there? It's crazy. But
right.
anyway, not everyone feels that way, I guess. What about allergies? So for me, my wife has allergies, and that's kind of a big thing, the filtration systems and whatnot. For someone with allergies, what should they be taking into consideration when it comes to AC units or even heating units?
The biggest thing is you're checking for two things. You're checking for, or you want to look for, how can this system help in filtering the air
Hmm.
um, from any pollutants and bacteria and the such. And also you want to control humidity. So
Okay.
those two are not always together, and there's different products out there within HVAC that can help mitigate that. So, for example, mold. Mold happens when it's dark, cold, and clammy.
Hmm.
If, for example, you oversize an AC unit and the home um, is on the tighter side,
Yeah.
you can get cold air, you can get a cold home, but it feels wet and damp, it feels gross.
Oh, that's interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
so therefore, that tells me that the humidity level is too high. So the AC was not sized appropriately. Plus, they should have been coupled with a central dehumidifier that you can actually attach to your central air system,
Okay.
because air conditioning um, is only concerned about the heat that you feel. It's called sensible heat. So the thermostat's just looking to reach whatever temperature you put it at, 70 degrees, 68 degrees, but it's not really concerned about humidity. Well, a dehumidifier is
Hmm.
not concerned about the temperature or sensible heat. It's concerned about latent heat, which is the how much moisture is in the air.
Okay.
So if you couple those together, they size the AC correctly and put a dehumidifier. Depending on the house, you don't always need it.
Hmm.
That's perfect. So now we have humidity levels at an optimal level. So now we don't aggravate the pollutants or bacteria for those that have asthma, allergies,
Hmm.
things of that nature.
Wow.
But then taking it a step further is filtering. There are cheaper filtration options out there that you can do, low maintenance or no maintenance, that can help clean the air. I'm not going to name products, but
Okay.
they're air ionizers. And what they basically do is that they charge the particles in the air and make them bigger because your regular filter may not be able to catch them. and to just make them bigger, and they get pulled into and caught in the filter a lot easier. So the only thing you have to do as a homeowner is replace your filter a little bit more often.
Okay.
Um, and I can't tell you how many systems have failed
Mm,
or have gotten recalled because people forget to replace the filter.
yeah.
Um, it's a big deal. So step number one, I would say, is start replacing your filter more often, and you can avert a lot of things. But for those that have maybe a little bit more serious allergies or
hmm
asthma or something like that, you can beef it up with those products.
Awesome. And that kind of leads into the next question about maintenance. I mean, maintenance is important. Obviously, you need to change out your filters.
Yes.
What other things, as far as maintenance goes, should somebody consider for their air conditioners?
Um, Again, the replacing the or changing the filter is the most vital part.
Hmm.
Other things like you can hose down your condensers. That's the unit that's outside the house.
Okay.
On your own, spray the condensers. If you're in an area like here, Massachusetts, in the fall, a bunch of leaves fall every
Mm,
year. Clear the area of dirt and debris,
okay.
because over time the condenser pulls in whatever it's surrounded in, and
Um,
then it has to work harder if the condenser coil or the outdoor unit coil is dirty. But really, just to be honest, replacing the filter and calling a trusted HVAC company once a year, sometimes
mhm.
twice a year, depending on what type of system you have,
Yeah.
is the ideal combo for
Right.
homeowners. But again, really, it's the filter. Again, I keep saying filter, but because
Yeah.
we've experienced too many silly calls, service calls, because of dirty filters. So
Yeah.
replace your filter, people.
I'll be honest here. My filters would not be changed if it wasn't for my wife nagging me about it. I never
Yeah,
think about it, but she's like, "Hey, you didn't change your filters yet." So I'm like, "All right." She
yeah.
orders them and I put them in. So at least we got that
There
going.
you go.
Yeah, it's a
Right.
team effort here.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know I remember when we bought ours from you guys in Massachusetts, we took advantage of
Hmm.
a incentive program that the state had. What are some of
Yep.
the programs for the state of Massachusetts that people can take advantage of? Because it is an investment. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
But
it
there
is.
there are programs out there to help people out.
Well, here in Massachusetts, there's a program called Mass Save,
Hmm.
and this program does two things. It provides a lot of incentives in the form of rebates,
Hmm.
and then also they offer a 0% interest loan, uh, no money down required for 7 years or
Hmm.
84 months.
Hmm.
So it makes the total bill a lot more doable for consumers, because unfortunately nowadays everything, including HVAC, it's not cheap.
Yeah, right,
It's an
exactly.
investment.
Yeah,
But it's something that can heavily affect your life, especially when you need it most, when it's really cold in the
exactly.
winter or really
Mhm.
hot in the summer.
Yeah.
Right now, believe it or not, there are rebates up to $10,000
Oh, wow.
per home. Yeah, so this year, it started last year, 2022, and now this year, it's going strong. And that is part of the whole craze around here, and
Mm,
everybody's trying to take advantage of it. The goal is, there is a catch, and the
okay.
goal is really to help reduce the need for fossil fuels. And when I say fossil fuels, it's heating with natural gas or propane or
Mhm.
oil. And then in either supplementing your system or totally replacing it with heat pumps, which
Mm,
is electric. It's not for everybody or every situation, but if it is, you can, get a little bit of a rebate or get the big one, which is a $10,000 rebate.
wow.
So that's the big one around here. There's also something that came out on the federal level called the IRA, which is stands for Inflation Reduction Act. And depending on the system you installed, you would get a $2,000 tax credit, where before it was $200 or $300
Oh, wow.
or tax credit. So now it's a big tax credit, and they're actually still trying to come up with more programs out there on the federal level so that you can take even more advantages of it. And
Okay.
there are some income-based ones as well. So, for example, Mass Save, you can couple that $10,000 with the IRA with an income-based one. You're talking maybe about 18 to $20,000 in rebates when
Wow.
it's all said and done.
Dang.
Um, and they even launched for commercial too. So I actually just uh, did a commercial bid, and the total rebates that they qualify for is $100,000 in rebates from Mass Save.
Dang.
Um, so depending on the project, it really is a no-brainer. You couple the rebates with a 0% loan,
Hmm. Yeah.
it's doable for most people.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good point where if a homeowner is talking to an HVAC company and they don't know anything about these rebates or any programs that they can take advantage of, they don't have the customer's best interest in mind. And
Right. No,
they,
not at all.
yeah. So they need to be finding someone like David, in your local area where,
Mhm.
like, hey, here are the programs that you could take advantage of. You want to find someone who's a scientist like David here, and then someone who knows about the rebate programs and all these incentive programs where it wouldn't be so much of a burden to upgrade or to get a new system in your house.
Right. And I'll take it even a step further.
Mhm.
There's some people that will, or some companies that will tell you about it, but once the job is all said and done, they won't hold your hand through the process.
Yeah.
And we do that. We actually have somebody on staff that's solely responsible for Mass Save, for
Awesome.
processing the heat loans with the customer,
Wow.
holding their hand, having meeting them at the bank if we need to, and then even once the job is done, helping them and assisting them with getting their rebate and being their, liaison for this, for this programs to get
Mhm.
them the rebates. So,
Wow.
we take it even a step further, not just informing, but assisting them and actually getting it done.
Yeah. Man, you need to open an office here in Houston, man.
Soon, man, soon.
Yeah, soon. Awesome, man. So let's just get into some general questions here. Some
Yeah.
listeners are not in your service area, unless you
Mhm.
plan on going national anytime soon. But for those who are looking for a good HVAC company, they like what you're saying. They like, your customer service, the things that you do, how you help the customer through the whole journey. What should they be
Yeah.
looking for in a company when they're doing their research?
I mean, you want to take a look at reviews are an obvious thing,
Yeah.
but I'd like to look at the quality of the reviews and what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I'd like to look at reviews like they took their time, they didn't pressure me,
Mm,
they educated me on what my options are.
right.
Anything around that, what I mentioned earlier is what you want. You want it to be a consultation
Yeah.
appointment rather than a bidding appointment. They're not there. I actually even hate saying that word when it comes
Mhm.
to homeowners. You shouldn't be collecting bids. You should be collecting
Mm,
consultation appointments.
I like
And
that.
because you like it or not, there's a statistic in HVAC that a homeowner is likely to purchase HVAC around 1.5 times in their lifetime
Mm,
because the systems will last 15, 20 plus years.
right.
So therefore, if oftentimes we find it's the homeowner's first time uh, going through this process
Sure.
because of that statistic, right?
Yep.
So
Hmm.
you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence in collecting as much information as you need. Now, if you need to extract the information from that contractor, they're probably not the contractor for you.
Yeah.
They need to be a fountain of advice and
Yeah.
information to
Hmm.
you, and you often want to be, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, the other guy didn't say that. That is a sign of a good company, a good HVAC company that
Right.
to hire. So you want them to be informative. You want them to take their time during the appointment. You want them to be willing to be sacrificial with their time.
Yeah.
And you also want them on a practical level, please, for the love of all things holy, have them do a load calculation. What we said earlier, they
Mm.
need to be measuring the house, they need to be taking into account insulation and all that, and even provide you with.
Mm.
I try to teach our guys here, show the customer your load calculation, you know, and be able to, say that. And again, a lot of times, in at least in our area, we other contractors don't do that. They don't even take the time to ask them their name and how they plan on
Mm.
using the system.
Yeah.
So those are the things I would be looking for in an HVAC contractor.
Wow, that's amazing, man. Those are some great tips. It's amazing. You've been in business for what, 4 or 5 years now?
4 years, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And just you've gone like to the next level in just 4 years. It's pretty amazing. But you telling
Thank
your
you,
story earlier, all your experiences prior to this really prepared you for what you're doing now. And I think that the
100%.
biggest thing is for service nowadays is educating the customer. And
Yes,
that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to educate people, to help them when they're doing their research and their due diligence, so they can find someone that they trust and they don't get screwed over. So with
100%.
that, well, I don't want to say the most important, a very important question is,
Okay.
are you a coffee guy or a tea guy?
Oh, I'm coffee all the way.
Awesome, man. Any specific brand or store you like to go to?
I would like to give you like an amazing answer. So I love drinking it. I would, but I have no idea about anything coffee. I just know what I like.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
So I'm a black coffee kind of guy. No
Me too.
sugar, no cream, no milk.
Yeah.
The bitterer, if that's a
Hmm.
word, the better.
Yep.
Um, Currently, and all you coffee savants out there, please don't laugh at me, but currently, um, I'm really, um, I'm really hyped on French roast K cup from Starbucks.
Oh, okay.
For some reason, it's super strong.
Yeah.
Has an amazing. If you like the pure taste of coffee,
Hmm.
I love it. So anything strong and black,
Yeah.
it's for me.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I recently went to like this last week, a coffee shop, and it was like a gourmet coffee shop. And all they had was like pour over coffee. And you order it,
Yeah.
and you had to wait a good 15, 20 minutes before you got it.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there waiting, and then it comes to me and I'm drinking. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the best coffee I've ever had.
Yeah,
Is amazing. So, but it does
that's
come with the
awesome.
price too.
Oh
So
yeah,
it
it
might be
does.
just a once a week thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, hey, so if someone is in your area and they would like to
Mhm.
contact you, Some Zero, to get some more information, where would you want them to go?
Our website is a great place to start. We have a lot of information there and
Hmm.
a quick, easy form to fill out if you find that we would be a good fit for you. So that's SomeZeroEnergySystems.com. You can find us also on Instagram, Some Zero Energy, Facebook. You can DM us through there, or just Google us and call us or text us. We have office staff ready to answer anybody's questions, point you to the right direction, and we are low pressure here. So
Hmm.
we want to educate and then let you make the decision because ultimately it's your decision. So
Yeah,
that's how you can find us, and we'd be honored to answer any questions you have.
excellent. And you guys are primarily in just the Metro West area, then, right?
Metro West area, Greater Boston area,
Okay.
and a little bit into like Norfolk, almost getting into Worcester area
Okay.
as well. So
Gotcha.
we cover a decent amount of mass.
Okay. And a lot of people in those areas. Okay. Excellent, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time. It's cool that you're my first guest. We go back
Yeah,
quite a
thank
few
you.
years. We don't just have the HVAC experience together. He's an amazing drummer for the church, so it was always cool going to church and
So
seeing him
thank you.
and the drums and stuff. You have an interesting story behind that as well, and just
Yeah,
to know your wife and to work with your wife at the school was amazing too. So it was cool that you were my
yeah.
first guest. So I really appreciate your time. And can we do this again when winter time starts coming in? We could talk about heaters.
Oh, totally, totally.
Excellent.
Anytime.
Excellent, man. Okay, cool. So we'll do that. We'll plan that in about 6 months or so.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for
Fantastic.
having me. And look forward to the next one.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.